recording is on. So, hello everyone, and welcome to the third day or the fourth day of the OpenStack Manila PTG. This is the PTG for the automation cycle, and we had a couple of sessions already. Please check them out in the YouTube channel in case you're curious to know what we discussed. And today we will be talking about a couple of more topics, starting with providing support for efficiency policy on NetApp shares, which is proposed by Sai. So, Sai, where's yours?
Yeah, thank you. Uh, will you be opening the Etherpad I shared?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, but I don't see that.
You, Sai, you click that close share document. You that three dots, right?
Oh,
That
okay.
the more actions, right? Can you go to more actions and
Yeah,
click
yeah.
close share document? Then you can see what Carlos is presenting.
I clicked on it actually. Close share document.
Again, click open. Yeah, it will come.
Yeah, now I'm able to see. Thank you, Carlos. Thank you,
Yeah, okay,
Saravanan.
okay. Yeah,
Uh, yeah,
I face
hello
for understanding.
everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. This is Sai from NetApp, and we are here to present the topic on the storage efficiency policy. So, at present, if you see, whenever we create a share in the backend, it's automatically assigning auto as an efficiency policy, and we do not have a control over it. Say, if you want to assign a particular efficiency policy to the particular volume that is created for the share, so we do not have a way. So there is a request from one customer that they would like to have a specific efficiency policy assigned to the specific volume. So that's why we have put it here. That's a problem description. The solution is we would like to introduce an extra spec, I mentioned in the solution first line, NetApp efficiency policy. That's going to be the string, and this will be pre-created on the ONTAP storage backend. How to create, I have given the steps down. That's how we will be creating, but this should be pre-created for particular vServer which we are mentioning in the manila.conf. Yes, and if you see, and this is how it is going to be: OpenStack share type create, and as we know, like extra spec and NetApp efficiency policy and the policy name.
Mention the line number, Sai. Mention the line number so that clear. Yeah.
Yeah, it's there. No, yeah,
Yeah. Okay.
sorry,
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. So,
Yeah,
yeah. Okay.
yeah, line 6. That's
Yeah.
how
Okay.
we want to do it. And so when we create, it should directly go and assign it. But the only condition is we have to pre-create it. That's what we mentioned in the note. We can have it for all the SVMs, or if the share type is creating for the particular SVM or particular backend, do it for the particular vServer. That's what is in the line number 8. And line number 9 is efficiency policies are created only vServer level, not for the volume. If you go to OnTap, you will not find any command to create the particular efficiency for the volume, and that should be created for vServer level only. And for this release, we are liking to implement it for the samples. And if customer is, if you see line 27, we have mentioned for the D release, we want to support it for the express. If the customer is having an important or urgency on this, we would like to go for true. But for true, we have a lot of limitations or a lot of parameters to be mentioned, as mentioned in the line number 20. For false, we can directly pass the name, but for true, the vServer will be created on the fly, right? So we will have a lot of parameters for creation of efficiency policy also, because the vServer is not existing earlier. So this will have a lot of work for us, and the implementation also a little tricky there. We wanted solutions from the community.
Yeah, yeah. The question is maybe assume this is like another construct. Another construct means like a set of parameters. So today when we create a share server, right, and we are creating leaf and we are creating gateway, we do multiple things. So along with that, when DHS2 is mentioned, whenever we create a share server, we have to create a policy. We have to create efficiency policy, and that needs parameters mentioned in line number 21 to 25. And so even we wanted to know from this forum for Gautam Carlos, like how do we do that? See, we can't pass everything in extra spec, right? Then it is too much of information, right? And see, in case of networking, we got the shared network concept is there, so it's kind of abstracted there. But for that, even we don't know how to do that. Maybe if we give us some clues, right, and then we can follow and we can explore that. Yeah, maybe difficulty level, maybe it's not difficult to code, but we wanted to know the approach, like for such kind of requests, what we can do. And even same thing, even coming up for even QoS policy. We remember even QoS policy we supported a couple of releases back. I mean, 3 releases back. There also like customers wanted us to pre-create QoS policy from OpenStack. What we do right now is like we want somebody to go to ONTAP and create QoS policy. We want them to come and fill only in OpenStack. Like the policy name, we expect policy name to be filled in OpenStack.
Yeah.
But some customers wanted we were to create from OpenStack only. So this request and that request kind of both aligned, and so we wanted to know the approach. Like when we want to create some object, it needs a lot of parameters. How we can pass it in OpenStack, and we want to know that. And yeah, for de-release we'll support DHSS false, that is for sure. And but yeah, maybe based on your approach, what you're suggesting, right, we'll take a call whether we'll do it in de-release or maybe we'll do that in e-release. That we will discuss.
So DHS is true.
Yeah, for DHSS true. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, so just on the last note on the QoS policy stuff, um,
Yeah,
it,
okay.
it feels like ancient times, but I remember working on this a long time ago, and I remember that the driver does this. The driver creates QoS policies on the fly, but you might be talking about two different kinds of QoS policy, because I remember just this per share QoS policy that we would set up, and I just found a patch which I was working on back then. But it may not be sorry, it may not be entirely relevant, but I think the approach over there was it was a similar situation where we had some information that we wanted from the user, but the driver would just make up the rest of the information, right? Later, it would just make up the name of the QoS policy, whatever else does not make sense for a user, for a administrator to configure via share type extra specs. We just went ahead and made some defaults happen. So that's an option for you, even if you're approaching this from, hey, how do I create an efficiency type? But I need all of these parameters. Maybe some of them don't matter to an administrator. They care about schedule. They care about threshold percentage, or something. Just a couple of parameters probably get exposed, but the others don't. That's thought number one. But the other important thing I want to check with you is, for DHSS faults, you're saying that these efficiency policies can only be configured at the share server level, right? So for DHSS faults per backend, you only have one vServer, one share server, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So why even bother using an extra spec mechanism at that point?
There will be multiple policies we will create. So
Okay.
even it's only one vServer, there will be like a 10 to 20 policies they can have.
Yeah.
And example, auto, inline compression, I mean inline, and like you can have different schedule.
Mhm.
And so by default today, what happens? Any share we create, right? Auto is what configured by default, because we are not even passing any efficiency policy, and that's what customer wanted to overwrite with a different example. For some shares, right, they want to keep like every Sunday that the dedupe should run. And for
Okay.
some policy, they keep like a maybe like a when the volume is like filling up 80%, they want to trigger the dedupe and compression. So
Right.
they want to have these dynamics and for different volumes. Yeah, even
Makes
though
sense.
vServer is one. Yeah, okay,
Okay.
yeah,
So
Yeah.
within the vServer, I can have different shares having different efficiency
Yes.
policies.
Okay.
Okay. So that's the part I didn't get, because you said it's set at the vServer level.
okay, okay.
Yeah.
So
What
it
we
is
meant
actually
is,
being set at share level, is it?
correct, correct. But you have to
Okay.
create it at vServer level, but
Okay.
meant for volumes. Correct.
I see. And okay, that begs another question, but I'll hold that off. So
No.
you're saying you would have some policy names that are there on ONTAP, and an administrator knows it out of band of OpenStack, and they're just going to create it on the as a share type extra spec, um, right? So I would suggest, I mean, because I see the extra spec naming over here, it says NetApp efficiency policy. This ought to be a scoped extra spec. I don't know what the NetApp scoping is. I think it's just NetApp.
The
Um,
colon. Yeah, I
yeah,
think you're correct. Yeah.
yeah.
Maybe we
So
can remove NetApp
mhm,
from NetApp underscore also we can remove. That's how adaptive QoS policy also mentioned in the extra specs.
yeah,
Maybe after colon, NetApp underscore might not be required if that is
right.
okay. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, that makes sense.
yeah.
So what this does is it basically just runs past the scheduler. So the scheduler just ignores anything which has a colon in it. So it considers this as a driver specific extra spec. So it's not
Got it.
really a capability, but it's a directive. It's telling the driver to do something, and that's what this would be. Um,
Awesome.
so in that case, it's fine. There is, I mean, this looks like any other feature that NetApp is exposing via one of these scoped extra specs, right? I think there are like, I don't know, 20 at this point.
They are
Uh,
there.
there are a lot. So this would just be one another stuff that you would be working on. Are you trying to ask how should we manage the DHS true and DHS
Yeah.
false compatibility over here? So if presumably if somebody has DHS as true as their use case, if the driver
Mhm.
doesn't want to create the efficiency policy today, it can still use the same approach, correct?
It, yeah, it can use maybe the policy will not be there. Yeah, it will throw error because we
Okay.
created a new share server, right? The
Mhm.
share server will not have that policy. So, example, you pause on policy and say it is like a custom one policy, something like that. The policy will not be there in the vServer context. I mean,
Oh,
the share server context. Yeah, correct.
okay. I might be misunderstanding this. An
Okay.
efficiency policy cannot be shared by two different vServers.
No, no,
Okay,
yeah,
so
it
it
should
is
be
unique
yeah,
to a vServer.
share server.
Okay,
Yes, yes.
I see. So I thought it was like a QoS policy. That's just like a another
Uh,
object in ONTAP.
no, no, no. Yeah, it is. The parent is vServer. vServer. I
A
mean, share
vServer.
server is the
Okay,
parent.
I
Yeah,
see. So you'll have to end up creating it.
yeah.
Okay.
Can
Yeah.
this be?
So
Sorry, go
mhm.
ahead, Adam.
No, no, no. Go ahead, Carlos. I can hold on.
It was only like one question. Like, can this be set after the share server creation or the vServer creation, or does this need to be at the vServer creation?
Uh,
Actually, we should be setting it once the vServer is created. That's where the question comes because in the DSSS true vServer we create on the fly, right? So
Mhm.
how do we go with it? Because it will be in the process of creation of vServer and vServer creation is done. Now we have to create the efficiency policy. But to create the efficiency policy, we need to pass a lot of parameters. If you see from 21 to 25, they are mandatory that we should pass. So how do we go ahead with this? If you go with DHSS true, but false it is straight away. We go to ONTAP, create it, and come here and pass it as an extra spec. But in the DHSS true case, we wanted your suggestions.
Yeah. So technically,
Hmm.
if all you care about from an end user is what's on line 23 and 24, I don't know.
Hmm.
Do you care about line 25 as well, or
yeah.
does a
Yeah,
QoS
actually,
policy also be
yeah, no.
created?
Technically, 22 and 23 and 24, correct. How are we going to schedule? Yeah, I mean, correct.
Right. So these could also be share type extra specs, such that I mean, basically, you're creating a share of this type. It's going to end up in a share server at some point, and so we are going to go create a policy because it doesn't exist. If that logic can be used, you would then look for do I have a schedule in the extra specs or do I have a threshold percentage in the extra specs and create that appropriately. And if you create a predictable naming, vserver name underscore schedule or vserver name underscore threshold percentage or something like that, with that particular schedule or that particular threshold percent, like so
Hmm.
schedule can be 24 hours, let's say. So you're saying os underscore share server hyphen something something underscore schedule underscore 24. That becomes an efficiency policy with the name that you can just make up. And the next time you come around, you're like, okay, am I supposed to create this or does it already exist? You know how to look up an existing policy because you've
Yeah,
made it predictable by name. That's just a suggestion, and that makes it easier for you to implement it both for DHS true and false at the same time.
Mm,
Yeah, yeah,
yes,
I think
same.
maybe you're right that based on if user passes either 23 or 24, with that we can pre-populate 22 if somebody is passing schedule, right? So I can set policy type is equal to schedule. If somebody is passing threshold percentage, right? I
Yeah,
can set a
exactly.
policy type equal trigger. Maybe 22 I can auto populate. I mean I can make the decision based on the value given and 23 and 24. I can do that. Yeah, maybe one element we can ignore and agree and
And there is a QS
yeah.
policy name as well as a
Yeah, yeah.
express.
Well, there is one default is there. Yeah, there is one default.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that
Mm,
default we can apply. But maybe worst case, right? If they want something to override, maybe we don't know. Yeah, but there is one default QS policy is there,
Mhm.
and even I saw that today whenever we create, there is always appearing there.
it's
And
always
yeah,
best if
maybe we
you
can
do it correct.
mhm.
Yeah, yeah.
We
So
can
there are
go ahead with
two.
that.
Yeah, you
Yeah,
may want to
Yeah,
check. I mean, I know there
with the
is
customer.
adaptive QoS as a completely different thing,
Yeah,
and I'm not
absolutely.
familiar with that, but I was vaguely familiar with the initial QoS implementation, which is IOPS, BPS, etc. Like min IOPS,
okay,
IOPS, etc.
okay.
So I would, you have those extra specs already, so you know what to do in case somebody says, I want. I mean, if they have a share type which has all of those extra specs and it has
Ah,
efficiency things, you have to just
I
create
can.
a new QoS policy as well, right? Because
Yeah, it makes
they're
sense.
asking for
Okay,
it at the time of the share creation. That's just my thought on this. Like it feels like you can build on existing things. um,
okay. Yeah, QS policy.
Yeah. Yeah. But at the end, we would have to create a efficiency policy like how we are creating the vServer, correct?
yeah, pretty much, yeah. And you don't need to do this at vServer creation. You would do this when a share is getting created.
Correct.
Yeah,
Correct. Good. Got it. I mean, it's clear. So
yeah.
you anyway, your suggestion says that it's possible to do it, and we will take it. And because we will have to look into it, right? I think it's possible, Saranan. We will take a look according to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
customer. If he's forcing us to do DHS2 also this release, we will see. If not, we'll see how timelines with other features works, and then we can do it.
yeah, yeah. If a summary, yeah, thanks. Yeah, right, that's correct. Yeah, if I summarize, maybe we'll have only two more extra types. Sorry, few more extra spec. That line
Yes.
number 23, 24. Only those two will be needed. Other values we can populate. Yeah, QS is already there. Maybe we can take from there. And yeah, yeah, maybe two more spec we need. I think that's what Gautam is telling. And yeah, I think yeah we
Yes.
can look at that from that angle. Okay, we'll try that.
So 22 is mandatory, and it depends 23 or 24. It depends on the
24. Yeah,
22. Yep.
23. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I think.
Yeah, the five will come down to three. Yeah, like that it will become.
Two.
Okay.
Yeah. Maybe two.
Sure.
Makes sense. Thank you. Thank you, Gautam. I think
Thank you.
it makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
um, Question for you: is this testable in the gate?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Gate. I mean, Tempest. You
in
mean
the
or
in the
testing?
so yeah, we can't really test this
No,
with
no.
tempest tests and stuff like that, right? Because these are scoped extra specs. So but you are going to have some
Yeah,
sort of
sure.
testing that you can do in the CI, right? Because I don't even
Yeah,
know
yeah.
what an efficiency policy is. What does it do exactly for the end user? What is this schedule?
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Is that
We can cover it. Yeah, manual testing and yeah. So last time, maybe even though we have planned for, I mean, we have planned effort for Tempest, but yeah, maybe it didn't happen as how we expected. But this time, we are. I mean, I mean, we are good to. I mean, estimate the effort for Tempest and yeah, we
yeah,
will do that. Gautam. Yeah.
no, absolutely. And this is just me asking as
Mhm.
part of the thing interested that we also deal with a lot of NetApp customers.
Yes, yes.
I would expect for that to be tested just otherwise. So,
Definitely.
the thing is, of course, you cannot test this with a regular Tempest test and
Regular.
malware
Yeah.
test
Yes. Yes.
plugin
True.
because it's so NetApp specific
That's specific.
that you can't really add any tests over there. Um, Maybe you can. We've never tried it.
Okay.
Yeah,
Got it. We will note this down. I mean, yeah, it's needed. Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
perfect. That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah, great. Thank you. I agree with the approach as well. Thank you for bringing this up. Are there any other questions to Sai and Saravana?
I think we are good. Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the suggestions.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. Right, I think we can go to the next topic then. Maybe Stephen can catch us up in the middle of it. He mentioned he would be in another meeting until I think 10, 15 minutes from now. And yeah, I'm not sure if we can anticipate another topic because migration one, Takashi just said he would only be able to join starting at 15 UTC.
At 15, okay.
Yeah. Then after that we have share encryption and SQLAlchemy 2.0.
We can get started with SQLAlchemy 2.0. It just became an easier topic to do just because I think we've had some success over the last couple of days.
Awesome.
But I did have questions for, um, you know, either Stephen or Mike when if they were to join, but we can hold them off and we can ask elsewhere. So I can get started with covering this. So what's happening is we've had a major change in SQLAlchemy. And there was quite a lot of SQLAlchemy helper code that used to be in Oslo DB, and that had stuff like auto commit semantics, right? That was one of the biggest things that was being relied upon by Manila database. This thing. So it made our query writing very easy. So we would just not we would not do a lot of the session management with these with the way we were using that legacy engine facade in Oslo DB. We'd just end up beginning a session, doing a bunch of transactions, and then expecting that context to just close on its own and commit whatever data into the database. So unraveling that and migrating over to a new scheme where there is a context-based session manager. So there is basically a new approach in Oslo DB. It's just called Engine Facade. So that particular thing has a way to do session management based on the context. So you can actually set context.reader, context.writer, so that you can have a little more control on what your database queries can actually do. Right. So if you have a database query that's just doing a read, like select star from something, for instance, you'd create a reader context so that it's a read-only operation on the database, or as opposed to a writer context which can do both reading and writing. So you're looking at a value, updating it, or you're just writing a bunch of data into the database. So this was net new things for us, and Stephen was working on this for the Manila project all the way from the Z release. So it's been forever. So he had, I mean, I would think at some point close to 50 something patches to update every single query. Literally every single query had to be updated in the DB stuff. And for, I think there was a lot of lack of knowledge on our end onto how to use the engine facade. How do you work with SQLAlchemy 2.0? What are all the deprecations that we really need to worry about and things. And that was very useful for us to have somebody that was doing this in multiple projects, just probably out of the goodness of his own this thing. But he was able to see the patterns and kind of bring that over to Manila. But what threw us off a little bit was Manila's aspect of doing sub transactions, and these sub transactions were very important because we have the concept of having shares and share instances and quotas, for instance, that are all connected in some way. That when you make an update, we expect a lot of the updates to happen in that DB layer. Instead of doing atomic updates from the share manager. And we have these update the expectation out of these updates coded into our Tempest tests. So technically we say, okay, a share is being deleted. So once the share is deleted, I'll immediately check for the quota, whether the quota is being cleared or not. So these sort of expectations made it even more harder because you would have to make sure that all of this happened in a transaction, and before you return back to the end user, you had you had all of these things cleaned up, right? Whatever the tests were expecting, etc. So some of it was also rewiring our brains, saying maybe the expectations in the tests were too strict. But I think that's also the point where I think we had to appreciate what Stephen and Mike did. They kind of brought in this another concept of using independent transactions and making it closer to what we were trying to do, so that if you were wrapping stuff into a context, you would actually stop the session, commit whatever you're doing, and then start a new context to do a quota operation, for instance, which was actually happening in one big giant context and throwing things off. So that sort of change, and it took the past few weeks. We missed the Caracal release. With a lot of these changes, you can see the huge number of patches out here. Um, and we yesterday, I think, finally ended up merging the last few changes in the SQLAlchemy tree, which means for all of OpenStack, this was one of the main projects that was actually lagging behind, and we were able to go ahead and say, okay, you can use SQLAlchemy 2.0 and whatever else other dependencies like the latest versions of Alembic, etc., with Manila as well. That said, when we were doing this, when we missed the Caracal release, we kind of thought to ourselves that we ought to do a backport, because Caracal happens to be the it's a slurp release, which means that people might be upgrading from Antelope to Caracal and Caracal to E. And as you can tell, the E is not going to be around until next year, right? So next year around this time is when we would have the E release. So we don't want people waiting on Manila to not have SQLAlchemy support until then. There's SQLAlchemy 2.0 support until then. There's already people that do not follow the upper constraints in a sense. So you must have seen that chatter on the OpenStack Manila channel when Debian was building stuff. They already had SQLAlchemy 2.0 in their in their packages, and they weren't going to include SQLAlchemy 1.4 just for Manila's sake. So they were flagging this issue as a thing where we had to stop testing Manila for this release just because of this missing dependency. And also we saw early signs of people trying to deploy from Git, so directly from Git, and they were probably not using upper constraints, so they were not they relied on Alembic, a newer version of Alembic, or a newer version of SQLAlchemy. And they started seeing these failures and started reporting bugs against Manila and so on. So it's important. I think it's going to be one of the biggest backports that we've ever done upstream in terms of at least lines of code. But I am hoping we've actually tested this well with unit and functional tests, such that it doesn't feel like a wrong thing to do. Because of the fact that this release is going to be around for a while. So that's the deal. And the backport patch is on line 128. It is pretty big. I will warn you. So I think we, while we do this, I don't know, grab a coffee, I guess, go through this with a fine-tooth comb, because one of the good things about it is everything applied cleanly, because we just shipped Caracal like a couple of weeks ago. And so there should not have been a lot of changes at all. And actually we didn't have any changes in the Caracal, sorry, at least in these code paths. So as long as I was doing it in a particular order, everything applied quite cleanly. And I was able to squash all of those commits, so that it makes it easier for us to review this. So we don't have a long set of reviews going on the Caracal branch. Yes, and there's also a test job, and I just realized before this meeting that the Zool didn't run on this, so I'm going to hit a recheck. But if you look at the previous result from Zool, it did pass with SQLAlchemy 2.0 on that test job. So Carlos, if you're showing that screen, it's on top. And if you look at related changes or something, relation chain, it's the first one. Yeah. So Zool's not run on it, but if you go down and look at the Zool output from the last one, the reason probably it didn't run is because I probably made an incorrect change to the manifest, but there is a SQLAlchemy 2.0 job that ran in the last one, and it passed. So we're not going to merge this job change though, because we're not going to test it like this. We might create another job probably and have SQLAlchemy 2.0 in that test job if we think we're at a risk of failing something for 2.0. But this job, the way it's written, at least it doesn't really pull in 2.0. It gets SQLAlchemy master and Olympic master. So we would rather pick them up from released branches of SQLAlchemy if we were to go leave behind a test job in the Caracal cycle. But this is just for us to be sure that we're not breaking anything in 2.0 with SQLAlchemy 2.0. Yes, I'll pause here for a sec. Any questions so far on what we're doing, why we're doing it, or how we're doing it? Looks like none. I think it's happy news that we're finally through with this, and we're only left to bring it back to Caracal. One other aspect that I did want to bring out is if you've written DB queries in Manila before, you'd want to pay attention to the way these are restructured now. Every database query in that SQLAlchemy API layer is written with these new context, you know, objects that I was telling you about. So context manager objects, and those are used as decorators. So you will have a context manager dot reader, context manager dot writer as appropriate to whatever the query is doing. So if you run into anything and you need any help, I mean you have enough examples in the same SQLAlchemy API file. And there are also a couple of examples that Stephen threw in over there about how you could use the same context managers with the with context thingy. So if you don't want to use a decorator and want to actually use it in line, you do have some examples as well in that file. We might be making some more changes here, such as like right now we've got a lot of independent contexts, and sometimes in most of the times it's only to do with quota management, and we wanted to peel that out. So we were having this discussion on Gerrit, and I think Stephen kind of suggested a patch. What that would mean for us is to also change the expectations in the tests. So I think we would, yeah, we can do that as a follow-on or an improvement in Dalmatian and forward, if we were going to change the tests in some way. But it should not affect the functionality as is on Caracal.
Yeah, that is an awesome summary, Gautam. Thank you very much for that. And also thank you for squashing these changes. I would love to get more eyes on these changes, though. I mean, I know like at the end it will come down to the core team merging this, but the more people looking at them, the merrier, because it's a huge change and it's touching a lot of places. So I've looked at it, finished it, took some time, looked at it, finished the review this morning. And yeah, I would love to get this completed so that I can tag a new release as soon as we can. And for example, fix this for um, for places that they are broken, like Debian, for example. We've seen, I think, Thomas mentioning to us that if we don't fix this issue, then yeah, we are gonna enter into like a list of unstable packages and so on. So yeah, the idea is to fix this as soon as we can. And yeah, I think that's we are really close to that. And thanks to all of the work from Steve and Zeke and now Gotham, like squashing the changes, doing the reviews and everything. So yeah, that's I don't have anything else to add. I think Gotham did an amazing job covering all of the changes. So okay, do you guys have any other questions or something you'd like to ask? All right, taking silence as no. Um, Gotham, would you like to add something else?
So I did have like another couple of questions saying so SQLAlchemy 2.0 has some more changes that we've not yet acknowledged, but these are deprecations. So they are still supported with SQLAlchemy 2.0, but then they have been deprecated, and these behaviors are going to show up in deprecation as deprecation warnings, and we've kind of filtered them out in the unit tests, but you might see them in the in actual in when the application is running, for instance, in the Manila shares process, for instance, or the Manila scheduler process. So if you see some of those, I think, I mean, we don't really have bugs to track those deprecations. So we can proactively go ahead and create them. But I think there are a few that we might miss. So if you're an operator, or if you're developing this and you see some deprecation warning, it means we ought to act on it, right? So please help us by creating a bug if there isn't one, or trying to see if you can help us move past that application, change the code the way it's expected to be.
These backports ain't started yet?
Yeah, that's the one on line 128, and I've copied a bunch of people right now, so you might see yourselves on it already.
I see.
With respect to the deprecation warning, I'm only talking about the about Dalmatian and forward, because I'm sure we might have a lot to fix, and we'll see if we can opportunistically backport anything, but nothing is functionally required on Caracal, from what I understand.
And this was put directly back into. Wait, no, this is going back to Karakal, right? Is
Exactly.
this going further than Karakal?
No, I don't anticipate it because we've had. I mean, going back from Caracal, I think it's a bunch of OpenStack projects that don't have support for SQLAlchemy 2.0. So it's not just Manila. So I think it would be a harder effort if somebody wants to do this on Bobcat or Antelope. But I've not heard anything from anybody about it.
Okay, thanks.
Awesome. Any other questions? If not, I think we can hold off the other couple of questions that I had about um, do we have any more anti-patterns that we are using, and while Stephen and Mike were working through this, were there any unorthodox usages of SQLAlchemy itself? Were we doing something that they noticed was against the best practices and things? I mean, one, they did fix a lot of the unit tests, and the theme of fixing those unit tests was that the tests were relying on some implicit things, like you would create a bunch of instances of a share or snapshots or something like that, and you would read that data back. You would take the first element and try to assert something, but without an order by clause, you actually don't know. You can't really. There are no promises on what the order is from the database. So you might end up getting a different element, and so it's possible the test might appear flaky or even continuously fail because you don't really have an order by. And in such cases, we had a lot of discussion on Gerrit, and we said, this test was written wrong in the sense that the code doesn't care about the order, and which is why it doesn't have an order by clause. But the test somehow cared about an order because it's looking at the first element, for instance. So that sort of thing. So it's a coding practice that we ought to avoid, but I'm sure it'll start showing up, as you're adding new DB queries, and if you're adding some tests, you'll realize that you have to be explicit about that sort of thing. There's a sort of thing with refactoring, right? You'll start excavating and you'll go like, why was this person thinking that way? And many a times, I mean, that person was called Gautamar and they didn't know better when they were writing that code. Right. That is it from me. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Cool, then we can wrap up and move on.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Gautam. I think we can use a break first because I mean it's being around like 50 minutes, and also Stephen didn't join yet, so hasn't yeah. So I think we can take a couple break of some like 5 minutes, and then get back to the next discussion. I'll ping him. And I think Takashi, which owns like one of the next topics as well, said he won't only be available starting at 15. You'd say. So yeah, let's go
So
for a
how
break.
about starting at 15 UTC? Isn't it like 9 minutes from now?
Yeah, it is. Like
So
Stephen,
Stephen's available?
I'm not sure. I'll need
Okay,
to ping him.
all right. Because
Uh,
I think we could afford a longer break.
yeah, let's go for that then.
Yeah.
Yeah. So see
Thanks.
you at 15 UTC.